The sound of chains rattling in the darkness made Marcus Kellerman freeze in his tracks, one hand on the rope that descended into the abandoned mine shaft, the other gripping his lantern so tightly his knuckles went white. He had come here looking for salvage, for anything the mining company might have left behind when they pulled out 6 months ago, not expecting to find anything alive in these depths. The sound came again, a metallic scraping followed by a low groan that was unmistakably alive, unmistakably suffering. Marcus felt his heart hammer against his ribs as he lowered himself further down the shaft, his boots finding purchase on the rough wooden ladder that somehow still held after all this time. The air grew colder as he descended, thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, something that made his stomach turn. Blood. Infection. The smell of someone dying slowly. When his feet touched solid ground, Marcus lifted his lantern high and swept it across the chamber. The mine shaft opened into a small work area, picks and shovels scattered across the floor, a few rusted carts sitting on broken tracks. And there, chained to the support beam in the center of the room, was an orc woman. She lifted her head as the light hit her face, and Marcus saw green skin pulled tight over sharp cheekbones, small tusks protruding from her lower jaw, pointed ears lying flat against her skull. Her eyes were amber, bright with fever, and they fixed on him with an intensity that made him take a step back. She was wearing torn leather armor, the kind orc warriors favored, and her arms were pulled above her head by heavy iron chains bolted into the wooden beam. Her wrists were raw and bleeding where the manacles bit into her skin. "Human," she rasped, her voice cracked and dry. "Come to watch me die." Marcus found his voice, though it came out shakier than he would have liked. "Who did this to you?" she laughed, a bitter sound that turned into a cough. "Does it matter? Your kind fears mine. Someone decided to remove the threat." She let her head fall back against the beam. "Been here 4 days now, maybe 5. Lost count. 4 days, maybe 5. No water, no food, chained in the darkness of an abandoned mine." Marcus set his lantern down and moved closer, ignoring the way his hands trembled. He had fought in the border wars 3 years ago, had seen orcs on the battlefield, had been taught to fear them, to see them as monsters. But looking at this woman now, fever-bright eyes tracking his every movement, he saw only someone who had been left to suffer a slow and terrible death. "I am going to help you," he said, reaching for the chains. "Why?" The single word stopped him cold. She was staring at him with those amber eyes, searching his face for something. "Your people and mine are enemies. Leave me. Save yourself the trouble." "Because it is wrong," Marcus said simply. He examined the manacles, saw they were locked with heavy iron padlocks. "Do you know who has the keys?" "Long gone. They threw them in the shaft when they left." She watched him work at the locks, her expression unreadable. "You cannot break those. They are made to hold orcs, made to hold warriors stronger than you." Marcus ignored her, digging in his pack for his tools. He had worked as a locksmith before the war, before everything went to hell. His fingers remembered the work even if his mind was racing. "What is your name?" She was silent for so long he thought she would not answer. Then quietly, "Karga, of the Iron Fang clan." "I am Marcus. Marcus Kellerman." He fitted his picks into the first lock, feeling for the mechanism. "And I am getting you out of here, Karga of the Iron Fang clan." The lock clicked open after several minutes of careful work. Karga's left arm fell free and she cried out, a sound of pure agony as blood rushed back into the limb. Marcus caught her weight as she sagged forward, her right arm still held by the second chain. She was burning with fever, her skin hot even through his thick coat. "Stay with me," he said urgently, working on the second lock. "Just a little longer." "Why do you care?" Karga asked again, her voice barely a whisper. "You do not know me." Because leaving someone to die in the dark is something monsters do, Marcus said, and the second lock sprang open. Karga collapsed forward and he caught her, easing her to the ground. She was tall, nearly his height, and solid with muscle despite the days of starvation. Her breathing was shallow and rapid, her skin slick with sweat despite the cold. Marcus pulled out his water flask and held it to her lips. Slowly, just small sips. Karga drank like someone drowning, her hands coming up to grip the flask, but Marcus pulled it back. Slowly, or you will just bring it back up. She glared at him but obeyed, taking careful sips. When she had drunk her fill, Marcus examined her wrists. They were a mess of torn skin and dried blood, the flesh rubbed raw down to the bone in places. He had bandages in his pack, supplies for minor injuries, but this needed more than he could provide here. "Can you walk?" he asked. Karga tried to push herself up and failed, her arms shaking with the effort. "Give me a moment." "We do not have a moment. If whoever did this comes back and finds me here, we are both dead." Marcus slipped his arm under her shoulders, taking her weight. "Come on, one step at a time." Getting Karga up the ladder was a nightmare. She kept fading in and out of consciousness, her fever making her delirious. Marcus had to climb behind her, supporting her weight, talking to her constantly to keep her focused. His arms burned with the effort and his back screamed in protest, but he kept moving, kept pushing, until finally they broke through into the cold evening air. Karga collapsed in the grass outside the mine entrance, her chest heaving. Marcus knelt beside her, checking her pulse. Too fast, too weak. She needed medicine, needed rest, needed food and water and care she was not going to get if they stayed here. His horse was tethered nearby, a sturdy brown mare named Penny who eyed the orc woman with suspicion. Marcus packed up his supplies quickly, his mind racing through options. He could not take Karga to the village. The people there would kill her on sight or worse, chain her up again and finish what someone had started. His farm was 2 hours north, isolated enough that no one would see them arrive. "Karga," he said, shaking her shoulder gently. "I need to get you on the horse. Can you help me?" Her eyes opened, unfocused. "Why?" she asked again, that same word, but this time it was barely audible. "Because I am not leaving you to die," Marcus said firmly. With a strength born of desperation, he managed to get Karga onto Penny's back, draping her forward over the saddle. She moaned in pain but did not resist. Marcus swung up behind her, one arm around her waist to keep her from falling, and urged Penny into a steady walk. The journey north passed in a blur of worry and determination. Karga drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes mumbling words in the orcish tongue, sometimes crying out in pain. Marcus kept checking her pulse, kept making sure she was still breathing, kept pushing forward even as night fell and the temperature dropped. When the lights of his farm finally came into view, Marcus almost wept with relief. The small cabin sat in a clearing surrounded by fields, a barn and chicken coop off to one side, a well in the yard. It was not much, but it was home, and more importantly, it was safe. He dismounted and eased Karga down, carrying her inside and laying her on his bed. In the lamplight, she looked even worse than she had in the mine. Her green skin was pale, almost gray, and her breathing was labored. Marcus built up the fire in the hearth and set water to boil, then turned his attention to her wounds. The wrist injuries were the most serious. He cleaned them carefully with boiled water and the medical supplies he kept on hand, bandaging them with clean cloth. Karga stirred when he touched her, her eyes opening to narrow slits. "Where?" she rasped. "My farm. You are safe here." Marcus held another cup of water to her lips. "Drink. You need fluids." She drank, then her eyes closed again. Marcus covered her with blankets and sat back, watching her breathe. He had just committed an act that most humans would consider treason, helping an orc, bringing her to his home, caring for her. If anyone found out, he would be lucky if they only ran him out of the territory. But looking at Karga now, fever flushed and vulnerable, Marcus knew he had made the right choice. Whatever their peoples thought of each other, she was a person who had been tortured and left to die. He would not be party to that, would not let it stand. He made a thin broth from the vegetables in his stores and coaxed Karga to drink some, supporting her head with one hand. She managed a few sips before turning her face away. Marcus did not push. He settled into the chair beside the bed and prepared for a long night. Karga's fever broke 3 days later. Marcus spent that time barely sleeping, changing her bandages, getting water and broth into her whenever she was conscious enough to swallow, bathing her face and arms with cool water when the fever spiked too high. On the morning of the 4th day, he woke slumped in his chair to find amber eyes watching him with clear awareness. "You are still here," Karga said. Her voice was stronger now, no longer the desperate rasp of the mine. "Where else would I be?" Marcus stood and stretched, his back popping audibly. "This is my home. How do you feel?" Like I was chained in a mine for days. But there was a hint of dry humor in her voice. She tried to sit up and Marcus moved to help her, propping pillows behind her back. She looked down at her bandaged wrists, then around the small cabin. "You brought me to your home, cared for me." "Yes." "Why?" That word again, but this time it was different, not accusatory, not disbelieving, just genuine curiosity. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly aware of how tired he was. "I told you. Because leaving you to die would have been wrong. But I am an orc." Karga met his eyes steadily. "Your people hate mine, fear us, with good reason. We have fought wars. I know, I fought in one." Marcus ran a hand through his hair. 3 years ago, on the border, I saw terrible things." "Did terrible things?" He looked at her, really looked at her. "But what I found in that mine was not a warrior. It was someone who had been tortured, and I could not walk away from that." Karga was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "The humans who chained me were hunters. They found me sleeping in a cave, alone. I had been cast out from my clan." Her hand went to her side, and Marcus noticed for the first time the scars there, old wounds poorly healed. "My people and yours are not so different. We both punish those who show weakness." "What did you do?" Marcus asked softly. "I refused to kill a human child during a raid." Karga's voice was flat, emotionless. "The raid leader said it was mercy, said it was weakness. The clan agreed, so I left and they let me go. Better than killing me themselves, I suppose." Marcus felt something twist in his chest. She had been cast out for showing mercy, for refusing to kill a child. And then humans had found her and chained her in a mine to die slowly. The cruelty of it, the waste, made him angry in a way he had not felt in years. "You are safe here," he said firmly, "for as long as you need." Karga studied his face, her amber eyes searching for something. "You would risk everything for someone you do not know, for an orc." "For a person," Marcus corrected. "Yes." Over the following weeks, Karga slowly regained her strength. Marcus showed her around the farm, explaining his work, letting her help when she felt able. She was fascinated by everything, asking questions about the crops, the animals, the tools. She had lived her entire life as a warrior, she explained, trained from childhood to fight. The idea of growing things, of tending animals, was foreign to her. "In my clan, we take what we need," she said one afternoon as they fed the chickens together. "Hunt, raid, trade with other clans. But growing food, planning seasons ahead, this is different." "Different how?" Marcus scattered grain across the yard, watching the chickens scramble for it. "Patient," Karga said. She knelt down and one of the chickens hopped onto her knee, fearless. She smiled, a real smile that showed her small tusks, and Marcus felt his breath catch. You plant seeds and wait, care for them, trust that they will grow. Warriors do not think that way. We think about now, about surviving today. Maybe that is why there are so many wars, Marcus said quietly. No one is thinking about tomorrow. Karga looked at him, something shifting in her expression. You think about tomorrow, I try to. Marcus gestured at the fields around them. This farm is not much, but it is mine. I bought it with my service pay after the war. I wanted something permanent, something that would last, something worth building. You could have stayed a soldier, Karga pointed out, made a career of it. I could have. Marcus met her eyes. But I saw too many men die for causes they did not understand, fighting people they did not hate until someone told them to. I wanted something different. Karga stood, the chicken fluttering off her knee. You are an unusual human, Marcus Kellerman. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? She smiled again, just a small curve of her lips. I have not decided yet. As the weeks turned into a month, Marcus found himself increasingly aware of Karga's presence. The way she moved, graceful despite her size. The way she listened when he spoke, her full attention on him like he was the most important thing in the world. The way she laughed, rare but genuine, a sound that made his chest feel tight. He told himself it was just gratitude, that she was recovering and would leave when she was strong enough. But then he would catch himself watching her work in the garden, dirt on her hands and determination on her face, and he knew he was lying to himself. Karga seemed to be struggling with something too. She grew quiet sometimes, staring at nothing, her expression troubled. Marcus did not push, giving her space to work through whatever she was feeling. He had learned patience in the years since the war, learned that some things could not be rushed. One evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Karga finally spoke what was on her mind. I should leave soon. My wounds are healed. I am strong again. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. You do not have to leave. Your neighbors will notice eventually. A human and an orc living together, it will cause problems. My nearest neighbor is 5 miles away, and I do not care what they think. Karga turned to look at him, the firelight casting shadows across her face. You should care. They could drive you out, burn your farm. Humans do not accept orcs among them. Then they would be wrong, Marcus said stubbornly. You have as much right to be here as anyone. Do I? Karga's voice was soft. I am a warrior without a clan, an orc without a people. I have no place in this world, Marcus, not anymore. Marcus moved closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in her amber eyes. You have a place here if you want it. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words. Karga's breath quickened, her eyes searching his face. You do not know what you are offering. I know exactly what I am offering. Marcus reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her hand. Her skin was warm, her palm calloused from years of wielding weapons. Stay, please. Marcus. His name on her lips sent a shiver through him. Your people will hate you, they will see you as a traitor. I have been called worse. They will try to hurt me, to kill me. They will have to go through me first. Karga laughed, but it was a broken sound. You foolish, brave, impossible human. She turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. I should say no, should leave tonight while you are sleeping, go north to the wild lands where no one would find me. But, Marcus prompted, but I do not want to. Karga met his eyes, and he saw fear there and hope, and something deeper that made his heart race. I have never had a home, Marcus, never had someone who saw me as more than a weapon. You look at me and you see a person. Do you know how rare that is? Marcus brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Then stay. Build a home here with me. It will not be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. Karga moved then, closing the distance between them, and pressed her forehead against his. It was an orcish gesture Marcus knew from his time in the war, a sign of deep trust of connection. He brought his hand up to cup her face, feeling the strong line of her jaw, the soft skin beneath her ear. "I am afraid," Karga whispered, "afraid that I will wake up and this will be gone. That you will realize what you are doing and send me away." "I am not sending you anywhere," Marcus said firmly. "You are staying right here. Promise me." "I promise." Karga kissed him then, soft and tentative, and Marcus felt something in his chest unfold like a flower toward the sun. He kissed her back, gentle and careful, one hand tangling in her dark hair. She made a small sound against his lips and deepened the kiss, and Marcus lost himself in the warmth of her, the solid reality of her presence. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Karga rested her head on his shoulder. "I never thought I would have this," she said quietly. "Never thought anyone would want this with me." "I want it," Marcus said. "I want you, all of you." They sat like that for a long time, wrapped around each other in the firelight, and Marcus felt something settle in his soul. This was right. This was worth fighting for. The trouble came 2 months later, on a cold morning when frost covered the fields. Marcus was in the barn checking on the animals when he heard Penny neighing in alarm. He grabbed his pitchfork and ran outside to find 4 men on horseback in his yard, and Karga standing between them and the cabin, a kitchen knife in her hand. "Well, well," one of the men said, dismounting. Marcus recognized him as Tom Fletcher from the village. A bully and a drunk, the kind of man who enjoyed causing pain. Heard rumors someone was sheltering a greenskin. Thought it could not be true. Not Marcus Kellerman, war hero, protecting an orc. "Get off my property," Marcus said coldly, moving to stand beside Karga. "Or what?" Another man dismounted, hand on his sword. "You will fight us for it, for a monster." "She is not a monster." Marcus kept his voice level though his heart was pounding. "She is a guest in my home and you are not welcome here." Tom laughed. "A guest? That is a good one. Tell me, Kellerman, does your guest warm your bed at night? Heard orcs are animals in the sack." Marcus saw red. He moved before he could think, swinging the pitchfork at Tom's head. Tom ducked and drew his sword, and suddenly the yard was chaos. The other men dismounted, weapons drawn, moving to surround Marcus and Karga. "Get inside," Marcus said urgently to Karga. "No," Karga shifted her grip on the knife. "We fight together." There was no time to argue. Tom lunged and Marcus parried with the pitchfork, the wooden handle cracking under the force of the blow. Another man came at Karga and she moved like lightning, dodging his swing and burying the knife in his shoulder. He screamed and fell back. Marcus was not a soldier anymore, but muscle memory took over. He used the pitchfork's reach to keep Tom at a distance, jabbing and feinting, driving him back. Beside him, Karga fought with deadly efficiency, every movement precise and economical. She disarmed one man with a twist of his wrist and kicked another in the chest, sending him sprawling. But they were outnumbered, and the men kept coming. Marcus felt a blade slice across his arm and hissed in pain. Karga roared and tackled the man who had cut him, her fist connecting with his jaw with a sickening crunch. "Enough." A new voice rang out across the yard, deep and commanding. Everyone froze. Marcus looked up to see Sheriff Nathan Kine riding into the yard, 5 deputies behind him. The sheriff was a big man, graying but still formidable, and he surveyed the scene with hard eyes. "What in the hell is going on here?" Kine demanded. Tom pointed at Karga with his sword. "He is sheltering an orc, sheriff, keeping a monster on his land. That is against the law." "What law?" Kine's voice was cold. "Last I checked, this is Kellerman's property. Who he invites onto it is his business." "But she is an orc," one of the other men protested. "I can see that." Kine dismounted slowly. "I can also see 4 armed men attacking 2 people on private property." That is called assault, gentlemen. That is against the law. Tom's face went red. You cannot be serious. You are going to protect it. I am going to protect the law, Kine said sharply. And right now the law says Kellerman has done nothing wrong. You four, on the other hand, have committed multiple crimes. He nodded to his deputies. Arrest them. The deputies moved in, disarming Tom and his companions and binding their hands. Tom struggled, still shouting about orcs and monsters and betrayal. Kine ignored him, walking over to where Marcus and Karga stood. You all right, Kellerman? The sheriff asked. Marcus nodded, pressing a hand to the cut on his arm. Thank you for coming. Got word from your neighbor, the one who lives 5 miles east. He was riding past and saw these fools heading your way looking for trouble. Figured I should check it out. Kine looked at Karga, his expression unreadable. You are the orc they have been talking about in the village. Karga lifted her chin. I am. You got a name, Karga? Of the Ironfang clan. Well, Karga of the Ironfang clan, I am Sheriff Nathan Kine, and as long as you do not cause trouble in my territory, I do not care what color your skin is. He looked back at Marcus. That said, you are going to have problems, Kellerman. People are scared. They hear orc and they think of the border wars. I know, Marcus said quietly, but she stays. This is her home now. Kine studied them both for a long moment, then he nodded. Fair enough, but you need to be careful. I can protect you from fools like Fletcher, but I cannot be everywhere. Watch yourselves. After the sheriff and his prisoners left, Marcus and Karga went back inside. Marcus's arm was still bleeding and Karga insisted on cleaning and bandaging it, her hands surprisingly gentle. That could have gone much worse, she said quietly, wrapping clean cloth around his bicep. But it did not. Marcus caught her hand. Karga, I am sorry. I did not think they would come here. You have nothing to apologize for. Karga tied off the bandage and sat back. I told you this would happen. Your people do not want me here. Some of them do not, Marcus corrected. The sheriff protected us, and my neighbor, the one who sent him, he helped us too. 2 people out of a village of hundreds. It is a start. Marcus pulled her close, ignoring the protest of his injured arm. I am not giving up on this, on us. Are you? Karga was quiet for a moment, her head resting on his shoulder. Then she said, No, I am not giving up, but we need to be smarter, stronger. Agreed. Marcus pressed a kiss to her temple. Together, Karga echoed. Over the following months, they learned to navigate their new reality. Marcus taught Karga everything he knew about farming, and she proved to be a quick study, her warrior's discipline translating well to the careful work of tending crops and animals. She was stronger than Marcus, able to lift things he struggled with, and her endurance was remarkable. In turn, Karga taught Marcus things from her culture. Orcish words and phrases, songs her mother had sung to her as a child, stories of heroes and tricksters. She showed him how orcs fought, the principles of their combat style, and Marcus was surprised by how thoughtful it was. Every movement had a purpose, every strike was calculated. Humans think orcs are berserkers, Karga explained one afternoon as they sparred in the yard with wooden practice swords. They think we just rage and smash, but good warriors are always thinking, always planning. Like farming, Marcus said, dodging her strike. Karga laughed. Yes, like farming. They made a few cautious trips to the village together, and while some people stared and muttered, others greeted them normally. The blacksmith, an older man named Henry, even struck up a conversation with Karga about metalwork, fascinated by her descriptions of orcish forging techniques. Your people use different methods, Henry said, examining a piece of Karga's old armor that she had brought to be repaired. The metal is folded differently. I would love to learn how you do this. I could show you, Karga offered hesitantly. If you would like, Henry grinned. I would like that very much. It was a small victory, but it felt enormous. Marcus watched Karga's face light up as she talked with Henry about forge temperatures and hammer techniques, and he felt pride swell in his chest. She was finding her place here, slowly but surely. Winter came hard that year, snow piling high around the cabin. Marcus and Karga spent long evenings by the fire, talking about everything and nothing. Karga told him about growing up in the clan, the brutal training, the constant tests of strength and courage. Marcus told her about his childhood on his parents' farm, about joining the army because it was expected, about the nightmares that still woke him sometimes. "You regret it?" Karga asked one night. "The war?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "I regret the killing. I regret the waste of it all, but I do not regret what it taught me about myself, about what matters." He pulled her closer. "And if I had not fought, I would not have settled here, would not have found you." "Fate," Karga murmured. "My people believe in it, that some things are meant to happen." "Do you think we were meant to happen?" Karga kissed him, slow and deep. "I think I do not care. Fate or chance, I am grateful for it." They made love that night with the snow falling outside and the fire burning low, learning each other's bodies with patience and care. Karga was strong but gentle, her hands reverent on Marcus's skin. Marcus worshipped every inch of her, from the points of her ears to the small tusks that he had learned to kiss carefully. They moved together like they had been doing this for years, finding a rhythm that felt natural and right. Afterward, wrapped in blankets and each other, Marcus said, "Marry me." Karga went still. "What, marry me?" Marcus propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her. "I know it is not traditional, I know it will cause problems, but I do not care. I love you, Karga. I want to spend my life with you, so marry me." Karga's eyes were wide, shining in the firelight. "Orcs do not marry like humans do. We have bonding ceremonies, but they are different." "Then we will do both," Marcus said firmly. "Human and orc, whatever it takes, just say yes." "Yes," Karga whispered. "Yes, you impossible human. Yes." Marcus kissed her again, tasting salt and realizing she was crying. He pulled back, concerned. "Are you all right?" "I am happy," Karga said, laughing through her tears. "I did not think I could be this happy. Thought I would die in that mine, die alone and unmourned. And instead I am here with you, and you are asking me to marry you." "I would do it 1,000 times," Marcus promised, "in 1,000 different ways." They planned a simple ceremony for spring when the weather would be better. Marcus went to Sheriff Kine and asked him to officiate, and the sheriff agreed with a gruff nod. They invited the people from the village who had been kind, who had looked past Karga's green skin and tusks to see the person beneath. Not everyone accepted, but enough did that Marcus felt hopeful. For the orcish part of the ceremony, Karga explained they would need to exchange vows in her language, make cuts on their palms and press them together, binding their blood. It was ancient, she said, older than the clans, a tradition that went back to when orcs were nomads wandering the wild lands. "It is permanent," she warned Marcus. "In orcish culture, breaking a blood bond is the worst possible betrayal. Are you sure you want this?" "I have never been more sure of anything," Marcus said. Spring arrived with a burst of green and the sound of birds returning from the south. Marcus and Karga worked together to prepare the farm, planting seeds and repairing fences. The cut on Marcus's arm from the fight had healed into a thin scar, a reminder of how close they had come to losing everything. The wedding was held on a warm afternoon in late spring, in the yard outside the cabin. Sheriff Kine stood before them in his best clothes, a book of vows in his hands. 20 people had come, more than Marcus expected, and they stood in a semicircle around the couple. Karga wore a simple dress that the blacksmith's wife had helped her make, dyed a deep blue that brought out the green of her skin. Her dark hair was braided with small white flowers, and her tusks were polished until they gleamed. She looked beautiful and fierce and nervous, her hands trembling slightly as Marcus took them. "We are gathered here," Sheriff Kine began, "to witness the joining of Marcus Kellerman and Karga of the Ironfang clan. This is an unusual union, I will not pretend otherwise. But love is not bound by race or tradition. These two have chosen each other, and that choice deserves our respect and celebration." He went through the traditional human vows, and Marcus spoke his part clearly, never taking his eyes off Karga. When it was her turn, Karga's voice was strong and sure, the accent of her language making the words sound like music. Then Kine stepped back and Karga produced a small knife, one she had made herself in Henry's forge. She spoke in Orcish, her voice carrying across the yard, and Marcus listened even though he did not understand all the words. He caught his name, caught the word for blood and bond and forever. Karga made a small cut across her palm, then handed Marcus the knife. He did the same, feeling the sharp pain and the warm well of blood. They pressed their palms together and Karga spoke again, her amber eyes locked on his. "I bind myself to you," she said in the human tongue. "Blood to blood, life to life. Your enemies are my enemies, your joys are my joys. Until death parts us and beyond, I am yours." "I bind myself to you," Marcus echoed, feeling the words settle into his bones like truth. "Blood to blood, life to life. Until death parts us and beyond, I am yours." Sheriff Kine cleared his throat. "Then by the authority vested in me by the territory, I pronounce you married. You may kiss." Marcus pulled Karga close and kissed her as the assembled crowd cheered. Her blood was on his hand and his on hers, their lives bound together in every way that mattered. When they broke apart, both of them were smiling so hard their faces hurt. The celebration that followed was simple but joyful. People brought food and drink, and someone produced a fiddle and started playing dancing music. Marcus danced with Karga, both of them laughing as they spun around the yard. He danced with the blacksmith's wife, who cried and told him she was so happy for them. Karga danced with Sheriff Kine, who was surprisingly graceful for such a big man. As the sun set and the party began to wind down, Marcus found himself standing with Karga at the edge of the yard, looking out over their land. The fields were planted, the animals were healthy, and the cabin glowed with warm light. Everything they had built together, everything they had fought for. "Are you happy?" Karga asked quietly. "More than I ever thought possible," Marcus said. He turned to face her, taking her hands. "You made me believe in something again, made me believe that the world could be better if we are willing to work for it." "You saved my life," Karga said. "In that mine in the dark I had given up. And then you came. You saw me as a person when everyone else saw a monster. You gave me a home, a family, a future. How could I not be happy?" Marcus kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tips of her tusks. "I love you, Karga Kellerman." Karga smiled, her eyes bright with tears. "I love you, Marcus Kellerman. My impossible, wonderful, brave human." The first year of their marriage was not without challenges. There were more incidents, more people from the village coming to cause trouble. But there were also neighbors who helped, who stood with them when things got difficult. Slowly, grudgingly, the community began to accept them. Karga became known as an exceptional farmer and a skilled metalworker. She spent hours in Henry's forge, learning human techniques and teaching orcish ones. Some of the younger people in the village, curious and open-minded, started coming by the farm to talk with her, asking about orcish culture and traditions. Marcus used his skills as a locksmith to help people, never charging much, building goodwill. He spoke openly about his wife, about how much she meant to him, refusing to hide their relationship. It made some people uncomfortable, but Marcus did not care. Karga was his wife, his partner, and he would never be ashamed of that. One evening in late autumn, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Karga said, "I got a letter today, from my brother." Marcus sat up straight. "You did? How did he find you?" "Word travels, even between our peoples. He heard about the human who married an orc, and he put the pieces together." Karga was quiet for a moment, staring at the letter in her hands. "He wants to visit, to meet you." "Do you want that?" Marcus asked carefully. "I do not know." Karga folded the letter. "When the clan cast me out, I thought that was the end, that I would never see any of them again. But my brother, he was always different. He argued against my exile." "Then invite him," Marcus said. "This is your home. Your family is welcome here." The brother, whose name was Grom, arrived 3 weeks later. He was bigger than Karga, more heavily muscled, with the same amber eyes but darker green skin. He regarded Marcus with obvious suspicion, hand never far from the axe at his belt. "So you are the human who claimed my sister," Grom said without preamble. "I claimed nothing," Marcus replied evenly. "Karga chose to stay. I chose to ask her. We chose each other." Grom studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Good answer." He turned to Karga and pulled her into a fierce hug. "I missed you, sister." Karga clung to him, her shoulders shaking. "I missed you too." Over the following days, Grom stayed with them, learning about their life. He helped with the farm work, sparred with Karga, and slowly warmed to Marcus. One night over dinner, he told them what had happened with the clan. "After you left, things changed," Grom said. "The raid leader who called you weak, he died in battle, and people started questioning the old ways, saying that maybe mercy is not weakness. Maybe there are other paths than constant war." "What are you saying?" Karga asked. "I am saying the clan would take you back if you wanted." Grom looked between them. "Both of you, as a bonded pair, it would be unusual but not forbidden." Karga and Marcus exchanged glances. Then Karga said, "Thank you, brother, but my place is here now. This is my home." Grom nodded, looking unsurprised. "I thought you would say that, but I had to offer." He raised his cup. "To new paths, to brothers and sisters who forge their own way." They drank to that, and Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Karga had truly chosen this life, chosen him, even when offered a way back to her people. It was humbling and exhilarating all at once. When Grom left, he embraced them both. "If you ever need anything," he told Marcus seriously, "you send word. Karga is my sister. That makes you family too." "I will," Marcus promised. The years that followed were good ones. The farm prospered, and Marcus and Karga built a reputation as honest, hard-working people. More interracial couples began appearing in the territory, emboldened by their example. It was slow progress, but progress nonetheless. They had children, 3 of them over the span of 8 years. 2 boys and a girl, each with green-tinged skin and small tusks, Marcus's dark hair and Karga's amber eyes. They were beautiful and fierce and stubborn, and Marcus loved them with an intensity that sometimes scared him. Raising half-orc children in a human settlement was not easy. There were comments, stares, children who were not allowed to play with them. But there were also friends, neighbors who accepted them without question. And Marcus and Karga taught their children to be proud of who they were, to stand tall and never apologize for existing. On their 10th anniversary, Marcus and Karga returned to the old mine. It had been permanently sealed after the incident, but they stood at the entrance hand in hand. 10 years, Karga said softly. 10 years since you found me in the dark. Best decision I ever made, Marcus said. Climbing down into that mine, Karga turned to face him, her eyes soft. Do you ever regret it? The difficulties, the judgment, the fights? Never. Marcus cupped her face in his hands. You are my wife, the mother of my children, my partner in all things. I would do it all again, 1,000 times over. I love you, Karga said. I loved you when you freed me from those chains. I loved you when you brought me to your home. I love you now, and I will love you until my last breath. Marcus kissed her there at the place where their story began, and felt grateful beyond words for the chains that had rattled in the darkness, for the courage to climb down and investigate, for every choice that had led them to this moment. They walked back to their farm together as the sun set, their children's laughter carrying on the evening breeze. The fields were golden with grain ready for harvest, and smoke rose from the cabin's chimney. Home, Marcus thought, not just a place but a feeling. A choice they made every day to stand together against whatever the world threw at them. That night, after the children were asleep, Marcus and Karga sat on the porch and watched the stars come out. Karga leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, and hummed one of the orcish songs she had taught him years ago. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked. "Everything," Karga said. "How different my life could have been. If those hunters had killed me in the cave instead of chaining me in the mine, if you had not come looking for salvage that day, if I had refused your help and died alone in the darkness. But you did not," Marcus said firmly. "You lived. We found each other. And we built something beautiful together. We did." Karga lifted her head to look at him. "Thank you, Marcus, for seeing me when I was invisible, for loving me when I thought I was unlovable, for giving me a life I never dreamed I could have." "Thank you for staying," Marcus replied. "For choosing me, choosing this, even when it would have been easier to walk away. You made me better, Karga. You made me believe in something again." They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened around them, two people from different worlds who had found common ground and built a life on it. The path had not been easy, and Marcus knew there would be more challenges ahead. But they would face them together, as they had faced everything else. Because 10 years ago, Marcus had heard chains rattling in an old mine. And instead of walking away, instead of leaving the orc woman inside to her fate, he had made a choice. A choice that had changed both their lives forever. A choice that had rippled out to touch their children, their community, maybe even their world. It was not a grand destiny or a heroic quest. Just two people deciding to see past fear and prejudice, to choose compassion over cruelty, love over hate. But sometimes, Marcus thought, those were the most important choices of all, the small moments that defined who you were and what you stood for. Karga's hand found his in the darkness, their fingers intertwining with practiced ease. The scars on their palms from their bonding ceremony all those years ago pressed together. Blood to blood, life to life, just as they had promised. And in the quiet of that moment, surrounded by the life they had built together, Marcus knew with absolute certainty that he would make the same choice again. Every single time. The story of Marcus and Karga became legend in the territory, told and retold with varying degrees of accuracy. Some versions made Marcus into a hero who single-handedly fought off a dozen men. Others painted Karga as a princess or a powerful shaman. The truth was simpler and more profound. They were just two people who had found each other in the darkest of circumstances and chosen to build something good. Their children grew strong and proud, bridging two worlds with grace. The eldest, a boy they named Matthias, became a blacksmith like Henry, learning both human and orcish techniques. The middle child, their daughter Sira, showed a talent for healing and studied with the village doctor. The youngest, a boy named Thomas, loved the land like his father and took to farming with enthusiasm. Marcus watched his children grow with pride and occasional terror, knowing the world would not always be kind to them. But he and Karga had given them something precious. The knowledge that they were loved, that they belonged, that their mixed heritage was a strength rather than a weakness. As Marcus grew older, his hair graying at the temples, he found himself thinking often about that day in the mine. How close he had come to not investigating the sound. How easily he could have convinced himself it was just the wind or his imagination. How different everything would be if he had made the coward's choice. But he had not. He had climbed down into the darkness, had seen Karga chained and suffering, and had made the only choice his conscience would allow. And that choice had led to a decade of happiness, of love, of a family he treasured more than anything in the world. Sheriff Kine retired eventually, but not before telling Marcus that he considered him one of the best men in the territory. "You stood up for what was right when it was hard," the old sheriff said. "That is the measure of a person. Not what they do when it is easy, but what they do when it costs them something." Henry the blacksmith passed the same year, leaving his forge to his apprentice, Karga. It was a controversial decision that sparked heated debates in the village, but Karga proved herself time and again. Her work was exceptional, blending human precision with orcish strength, and soon people were coming from other settlements to commission pieces from her. The farm continued to thrive under Marcus's care, and he took on farmhands as he got older, teaching them the methods he had spent years perfecting. One of those farmhands was a young orc man named Durg, who had heard about the human who married an orc and wanted to see if the stories were true. "Are they?" Marcus asked him one day as they worked together to repair a fence. Durg considered the question. "The stories say you are a hero, that you saved Karga from certain death and fought off an army to protect her." Marcus laughed. "The numbers get bigger every time I hear that story. It was 4 men, not an army, and Karga saved herself as much as I saved her." "But the important part is true," Durg said. "You looked at an orc and saw a person. That matters more than the details." "It should not be remarkable," Marcus said. "It should be normal, but it is not. Not yet." Durg hammered in a fence post with casual strength. "People like you and Karga, you are changing that, making it easier for people like me to imagine a different life." Marcus felt humbled by that. He had never set out to be a symbol or an example. He had just tried to do the right thing, one choice at a time. But if that helped others find their own paths, he supposed he could live with being a symbol. On their 15th anniversary, Marcus woke to find Karga already up, standing at the window and watching the sunrise. He joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How lucky I am," Karga said simply. "How impossibly, ridiculously lucky." Marcus kissed her neck. "I am the lucky one. We can both be lucky." Karga turned in his arms and Marcus saw tears on her cheeks. 15 years, Marcus. 15 years of happiness I never thought I would have. 3 beautiful children. A home, a community, a life. All because you heard chains rattling in the dark and chose to investigate. "Best thing I ever did," Marcus said. "Besides marrying you," Karga laughed and wiped her eyes. "You romantic fool." "You're romantic fool," Marcus corrected. They celebrated their anniversary with their children and friends, a gathering that mixed human and orc traditions in equal measure. There was dancing and singing, food from both cultures, stories told in 2 languages. Marcus looked around at the assembled crowd and felt his chest swell with emotion. This was what they had built, not just a marriage, but a bridge between 2 peoples. A demonstration that coexistence was possible, that love could transcend even the deepest divides. Late that night, after everyone had gone home and the children were asleep, Marcus and Karga lay together in their bed. The same bed where Marcus had first brought Karga 15 years ago, fevered and wounded. So much had changed since then, but the fundamentals remained the same. 2 people who loved each other, who had chosen each other against all odds. "You think we made a difference?" Karga asked quietly. In the grand scheme of things, Marcus thought about that. About Durg the farmhand who felt brave enough to seek work on a human farm. About the other interracial couples who had formed in the territory, inspired by their example. About his children, growing up confident in their mixed heritage. About the villagers who had started with fear and suspicion but had slowly, grudgingly come to accept them. Yes, he said finally. Maybe not a huge difference, maybe not a world-changing one, but we made things a little bit better, a little bit kinder, and that matters. Karga nestled closer to him. I think so too. They drifted off to sleep like that, wrapped around each other, secure in the life they had built and the love that sustained them. And if Marcus dreamed of chains rattling in the darkness, it was not a nightmare but a reminder. A reminder of where they had started and how far they had come. A reminder that sometimes the most important moments in life are the ones where you choose compassion over convenience, courage over comfort. The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and sorrows. Marcus's parents passed away, one after the other, and he grieved deeply for them even though they had never fully accepted his marriage. Karga's clan sent word occasionally through Grom, and they learned that more changes were happening. More orcs were questioning the old ways, seeking peace with humans, exploring the possibility of a different future. Maybe our children will see a world where this is normal, Karga said one evening. Where human-orc marriages are not controversial, where half-orc children are not stared at. Maybe, Marcus agreed. We can hope for that. Their children began leaving home as they grew into adulthood. Matthias took over Henry's forge officially, marrying a human woman named Lisa who loved him fiercely. Sira went to the capital to study medicine, determined to bring better health care to the frontier. Thomas stayed on the farm, taking over more and more of the work as Marcus's body began to show its age. Marcus found he did not mind getting older, not when he could do it with Karga by his side. They spent long evenings on the porch, talking or simply sitting in comfortable silence. They traveled occasionally, visiting their children, seeing more of the territory. Everywhere they went, they found that their story had preceded them. People knew about the human who had saved an orc from the mine, who had married her and built a life with her. Some people were hostile, still clinging to old prejudices. But more and more, they found acceptance. Found other couples like them, other families bridging the divide between species. The change was slow, glacially slow, but it was happening. On their 20th anniversary. Sheriff Kine's successor, a young woman named Rachel, came to visit them. She had news. The territorial governor was creating a new position, an ambassador to the orcish clans. And he wanted Marcus and Karga for the job. You have done more to promote human-orc relations than anyone else in the territory, Rachel explained. The governor thinks having you two in an official capacity could help formalize some of the changes that are happening. Marcus and Karga looked at each other. It was a big decision, one that would change their quiet life on the farm, but it was also an opportunity to make a real difference, to be part of something larger than themselves. We will do it, Karga said, and Marcus nodded his agreement. The work was challenging but rewarding. They traveled between human settlements and orc clans, facilitating dialogues, helping to establish trade agreements, working to break down centuries of mistrust. It was slow, frustrating work, full of setbacks and resistance from both sides. But gradually, painstakingly, they made progress. Treaties were signed. Trade routes were established. Joint settlements were founded where humans and orcs lived and worked together. It was not perfect, not by a long shot. There were still incidents, still violence, still people on both sides who wanted nothing to do with peace. But the trend was clear. Things were getting better. Marcus and Karga served as ambassadors for 5 years before retiring back to their farm. They were older now, Marcus with more gray than dark in his hair, Karga moving with slightly less of her youthful energy. But they were content, satisfied with what they had accomplished. Their children visited often, bringing grandchildren. Marcus delighted in teaching his grandchildren about farming, about the land, about the importance of hard work and kindness. Karga told them stories of orcish heroes and human legends, weaving together the mythologies of two peoples. One summer evening, when Marcus was 65 and Karga was 63, they found themselves once again at the sealed entrance to the old mine. It had become a sort of pilgrimage for them, returning every few years to the place where their story began. 25 years, Marcus said, his hand finding Karga's. 25 years since I heard chains rattling in the dark. 25 years since you gave me my life back, Karga said. And so much more than that. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me hope when I had none left. Marcus turned to face her, seeing the lines that age had etched on her green skin, the silver threads in her dark hair, the amber eyes that still shone with the same intensity he remembered from that first day. You gave me all of that too. You made me believe the world could be better. You made me want to be better. We made each other better, Karga said. She leaned against him, and they stood there together as the sun set, casting long shadows across the land. I wonder sometimes what the young woman I was back then would think. The warrior who thought mercy was weakness, who believed in nothing but strength and clan loyalty. Would she recognize the person I became? Would the soldier I was recognize me? Marcus countered. The man who was taught to see orcs as monsters who fought and killed without question. We are both different people now. Better people, Karga said firmly, because we chose to be, because we chose each other. They walked back to the farm hand in hand, their steps slower than they once were but no less certain. The fields were golden with wheat, and Marcus could see Thomas working in the distance, his half-orc strength making the labor look easy. Smoke rose from the cabin chimney, and Marcus knew there would be dinner waiting, probably with a few of their grandchildren running around. This was what they had built, not just a farm or a family but a legacy. A demonstration that love could bridge any divide, that courage and compassion could change the world one choice at a time. It had not been easy. There had been fights and fear, discrimination and danger. But they had faced it all together, and they had won. As they reached the cabin, Karga stopped and pulled Marcus into a kiss. It was not their first kiss or their 1000th, but it still sent warmth flooding through Marcus's chest. When they broke apart, both of them were smiling. I love you, Marcus Kellerman, Karga said. Thank you for hearing those chains. Thank you for climbing down into the dark. Thank you for every choice you made that led us here. I love you, Karga Kellerman, Marcus replied. Thank you for fighting to survive. Thank you for choosing to stay. Thank you for every moment of these 25 years. They went inside together, into the warmth and light and noise of their family, and Marcus felt a peace settle over him that was deeper than contentment. This was rightness. This was what it meant to live a life that mattered. Not grand gestures or heroic deeds, but the daily choice to love, to stand together, to build something good in a world that so desperately needed it. That night, as they lay in bed with the sounds of their grandchildren's laughter still echoing in their ears, Marcus thought back to that day in the mine, to the sound of chains rattling in the darkness, to the decision that had changed everything. He would make that choice again, he knew. 1,000 times over, in 1,000 different ways, because those chains had not just bound an orc woman left to die. They had held the key to his future, to their future, to a life richer and more meaningful than he ever could have imagined. And as he drifted off to sleep with Karga warm and solid beside him, Marcus Kellerman knew without a doubt that he was the luckiest man alive. Not because his path had been easy, but because he had found someone worth fighting for, someone worth building a life with, someone worth changing the world for, one small choice at a time. The chains had rattled in the darkness, and Marcus had answered. That was the beginning of their story. But this, right here, surrounded by love and family and the fruits of their labor, this was the happy ending they had earned together. And it was more beautiful than any fairy tale could ever be.